Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, guys, welcome to another special edition of the Strength Coach Podcast. We do this every month with Vince Gabriele, and he is the founder of Gabriele Fitness Performance and Fitness Business University, as well as KISS Marketing. Vince, thanks for doing this, bud.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
All right. Ready for the holidays. I know you're traveling, which you got 3 kids. You got to be crazy to be traveling.
Nah, they're older now, so they're good.
Yeah.
You know, my youngest is 8, so they're actually pretty decent to travel with. They're pretty self-sufficient. I make them carry their own bags and all that stuff. So we're not doing. It's actually very enjoyable. We're going to California. Vanessa's mom lives out there, and I got a bunch of friends out there still from when I worked in San Diego, and I got a couple college buddies out there. So yeah, we're excited to do a little trip.
Now, let's just make sure you're not going ahead first doing a seminar, because last time you did that in Montana,
Oh my God,
we had a whole episode on it. That was awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
That was the craziest story. I gotta try and remember, like, go back and link that episode so people can hear that story. But Vince, all right, so it's Christmas, and we talked last about the big surge coming in January and how to take advantage of it. So we did that to kind of give people enough time to really kind of get things in order. But besides that, and we're kind of go back to that, but we don't want to be thinking last minute. We don't want to be thinking, hey, it's January's coming up. What am I going to do? Or, wow, or April 1st, you start thinking about the summer. You really got to start to think, how do you teach all of your gym owners, all your clients, about this piece of it, about really staying ahead of the game? Because there's so much to do with these things. It's not just, hey, we're having a sale. Talk to us about how you help them plan maybe for the year.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, one of my favorite quotes is from Mike Tyson, and he says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And that doesn't negate planning, right? I think some people like hear that quote and they're like, oh, well, we don't need to plan. Just like, no, you need to plan, right? And by all means, if it doesn't go, and it never usually does go exactly the way that you want it, there's variations of it, and you want to try and, push towards your goals as much as you can. But at the end of the day, there are many things in life that are out of our control. So, the first thing about a plan is just to be prepared for it probably not to go exactly the way that you're going
Good
to,
point.
think about it. But
Yeah.
I like to look at the marketing side of things in quarters. I think it's challenging to look at a full annual marketing calendar. Now, I do believe there are pillars that don't change. And here's my example of this. I think I've talked about this before. In wrestling, I don't know if you're a big wrestling fan, but I'm sure people that are listening to this are wrestling fans. The WWE, WWF, whatever, for 40 years has had WrestleMania, has had SummerSlam, has had the Royal Rumble, has had Survivor. I don't know if they do Survivor Series anymore. I'm not actually, I don't watch anymore, right? But they've had these like things that are these big events, and those events never change. If it's summertime, they're doing SummerSlam, right? And the wrestlers obviously have changed. The venue always changes, but the event always happens at that time. So I do think for an annual calendar, you can look at what are some of the big pillars that, hey, you're probably going to do this every year from an event standpoint. Let me give an example. The month of December, my community has a thing called the Winter Walk, right? And it's a community event where people put up tables and people are walking around, and every year we have set up a table and we generate leads from that table. And we did it, many years ago. It worked well. And so we just do it again. So it's kind of like just like on the calendar. We don't need to think about it. Like we even told the people, like, there's like, do you want to do the winter walk this year? And we're like, we'll do it. Yeah, we're gonna do it every year. Just put us down. Like, don't worry about like saying, well, it's $400 this year instead of 250. It's just like, no, we're doing it because it's a thing that has shown to be successful, right? And so I think from an annual perspective, you have to look at what are the core main things? And I was using that as an example. It's actually not a big thing for us. I was just
Yeah.
using it as an example. It's like it happens every year. There's a certain time period that it happens on. It's the same week. We have a process for what we do when we go. So I think that that's like a really, really important thing to look at the things from an annual perspective that you're just going to do every year. And this is one of the most important things that people need to understand. And one of the first things I do when I map out a marketing plan, it is almost borderline uh, insane to do something that works and to not repeat it. It just doesn't make any sense. Yet I do it. Everyone else probably does it. And boredom is usually the culprit. We're always looking, think, well, what's the next thing? What's the next? Oh, the winter walk. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Last year. No, 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 no. It's just like it worked. So some of the times the guesswork can be taken away of looking at your year and being like, what worked last year? Right? What actually was successful? And then doing something crazy like repeating it and not changing it and not needing to go out and reinvent the wheel. And like, no, it just worked. And until
Yeah.
it stops working, just keep doing it. And that's where I think that the fatigue comes in. Fatigue comes in from like people, this is a big discrepancy here. The fatigue comes in, especially with marketing, from people that actually do marketing stuff, right? Versus building assets that can be used and reused. Is they're constantly on this train of like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this, the squirrel marketing idea. Like, let me do the newspaper, let me do this. And they're just always running, trying to find stuff versus settling in and being like, okay, let's um, touch this once. Let's create this plan. I talked about last month, 50 strong. Like we've created that thing once and now it's like set. The, the whole process is set and we just use it. And it doesn't take a lot of effort, doesn't take a lot of energy to do it. So I think that's one of the most important things with a plan is when you are making a plan, leverage what you've had past success with and then just pop it back on the calendar and do it again. Now, in terms of actually making the plan, I talked about in the very beginning about I don't really do like a big annual. There's pillars in the annual, but really what I dial down is the quarter. And there's a magical date that I like to plan the quarter, and that is 6 weeks before the quarter starts. So essentially, on a Jan 1 quarter start, November 15th will be the day in and of around the day where I sit down and I'll block typically 3 to 4 hours and I'll be like, what are we doing for marketing? What are we doing to generate the leads? What are the certain time periods? What are the events? What are the things that we did last year? Like, and then you start to put that, on the calendar. So, for example, for my business, for my consulting business, every year in January, around the third week, we run a webinar. It's just like clockwork. We run the webinar. So on my marketing plan, I know that on November 15th, when I did it, it was all right, January webinar. And a lot of it was built around that. So I think that's like, so you should mark your calendar and they can do this now before, right? And do it for the year. Put it on your calendar for November 15th, I call it marketing map out session. right, where I'm going to sit down and I'm going to intentionally, to use your word, plan what I'm going to do, what I'm going to take advantage of. And now when you do it ahead of time, you have the time to start to think about, who you're going to reach out to, what you're going to do, what resources do you need? Do you need to set up a Facebook ad? Do you need to do this landing page? And you have the time to be able to prepare for that versus when, if we're thinking about it now, right? So it's December, whatever, as we're recording December 21st. Well, your marketing needs to start for next year on January 3rd, 1st, whatever. You don't have a lot of time to get ready if you haven't done it already. Now you can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's best done when you're not rushing and urgent around it. So that's like what I think the time period of when, and take these, there's 4 dates of the year. There's 4 quarters of the year. So there's 4 dates. And what you do is you take the start date of the quarter and you subtract 6 weeks. And that is your date that you're going to sit down and do it,
Yeah.
as close to the day as you can.
Cool. So ideally, they sit down right now, do an after action review. Hey, what worked this year? What are we repeating? Right? Put those dates on the calendar the 6 weeks before the quarter starts. So November 15th, and then it would probably be what's the next quarter? It starts April 1st. So that would be February 15th. You're gonna have to do another one. And then you just basically uh think about your marketing glove, like you talked about, like whether is that, are we doing Facebook? Are we doing the newspaper? Are we doing webinars? Pick your 5 parts of your glove to know that, hey, this is coming up, because if you're not doing that, like you said, try doing Facebook ads on, you know, December 31st for January 3rd, and figuring all that crap out. So but yeah, I love that idea of that after, you're right. Why we get bored. It's kind of like programming, right? Like
Yes.
I think a lot of people talk about that. Coach Boyle talks about, Kevin Carr talk about it. We get more bored than the
Yeah.
clients do. They're only in there twice a week. They thinking, oh, 6 weeks they've been doing the same 2 workouts, but you know, probably better that they're doing that. Good stuff. All right, so let's just kind of look at. I want to just stay on this for 1 second. So,
Yeah.
what in your quarter can you give it? So you do, like, what else do you do in January? We know you have a webinar. So, what will you do in Feb? What will you say for February and
Yeah.
March?
I'll keep it on the gym side just to kind of, because
Hmm.
that's, most of the people aren't
Yeah,
running consulting
yeah.
business. So I'll keep it on the
Hmm.
gym side. Um, so, as I said last week, our January, our equivalent to a webinar, right, in the gym space would be running some type of a challenge, whether that's a new year, new you. I think that's what Varsity House does. They call it New Year, New You. We run our 50 strong. Sometimes it's a fat loss thing, but there's some kind of an event based challenge for that, usually and typically in January. And when you have a big event like that, most of the marketing is drawn to that one thing. I think a lot of people always ask the question, I have an evergreen offer. Should I pause the evergreen offer? And my answer is, yeah, pause the evergreen offer and then, put all roads into that one a big event, right? So there's a couple things you look at. So for example, if we're using February, right? And there's a holiday in February that you're not supposed to miss. What is it?
Groundhog's Day,
No, it's called
President's Day.
it's called Valentine's Day. Don't let your wife hear this podcast, okay? That you didn't know when Valentine's Day was, right? So there's Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And so that's like a perfect, it's sometimes one of the most important things in marketing and what you need is a reason, is a reason. The change of the month is a reason. The change of the year is a reason. A holiday is a reason. Um, the most famous reason ever when we had an explosion in business is when we reopened it after COVID-19, and we reopened the gym for outdoor training. And I'll never forget what we did. We did like a voicemail drop that we were back open for outdoor training alone. And it was like this mass explosion of people that came, back, but that was a reason, right? And so I think that that's a really important marketing concept for people to understand is sometimes, and the reason doesn't need to always be huge. That is why, like, if you um there's a holiday every day of the year, right? So like I don't know what today is, but like there's like a National Nacho Cheese Day. There's stuff like that every day. And sometimes that obscure stuff is very powerful, right? So what you're doing is you're giving yourself a reason for showing up. So that's what like an example would be in February. There's a reason that we're doing this. It's Valentine's Day. And so you can use a theme. We have our bring a date, which is basically like a bring a friend week or something like that, right? And we know that we're going to do that every week, and we know that there's going to be internal. This is more of an internal promotion. It's a referral driving thing, right? So people would, and we market it basically our email list to our current members. We'll put signs up in the gym. We'll post it on our private Facebook page, and then we'll make announcements in that sessions, right? And that's how we promote that internal thing. And so like we know that we've done that every year. So we know that that's like, okay, that's how we're going to run it. We're going to run that play. And, we're going to do that coming up in the month of February, right? So that would be something that's on the calendar, right? And then, on your calendar is also not just event-based stuff, but on your calendar should be, well, how often are you going to send an email, right? Are you going to send an email every Monday, Wednesday, Friday this year? Right. And I think that, email marketing is a really powerful way for people to get new clients. And I think not enough people do it. I think it takes some time to learn. It takes some time to do it well. But it's almost like, I've talked about this many times, but like your email list is this auditorium full of people that have the ability to become customers, and they're sitting in your basement every day, and you have the ability to walk up on that stage, talk to them, teach them something, and ask them, "Hey, do you want to come try the gym?" Right? And I think that that's like an opportunity, and that's why I write an email every day to my consulting list. I read an email every day, and I've done this for 5 years. So 365, maybe call it 360 because there's probably a couple I've missed, right? But not many. But 365 times five, that's the amount of emails I've written since I started this business. And I just look at it, it's like every day I'm just walking up on stage and I'm saying, "Hey, my name is Vince. I'm going to teach you something hopefully really cool. You're going to really like it. And oh yeah, by the way, I got this thing. Do you want to try it?" And I think that that's like a very simplistic view of it, but maybe it's something people need to pay closer attention to, because I will tell you this, you don't own your social media platforms. You don't own Instagram. You don't own Facebook. Your email list is an asset that you
Yeah.
own. And it's one of the more important ones. Like if I was like buying a gym, I would look at the health of the email list as one of the main drivers on would I want to buy this gym. So I don't think people give it enough importance, but I think that that's a really powerful. So you decide, so on the calendar would be deciding, are we going to do email Tuesday, Thursday? What did you do last year? Oh, well, last year we sent like, one email a month, or we sent, it was so sporadic. It's just like, well, this year maybe you make a decision to decide to be more consistent with that. And this year maybe it's, all right, well, I'm going to email on Monday, Wednesday, or I'm going to email on Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to email on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it is, but that goes on the calendar. And then right? And whether those emails are promoting a specific event you have coming up, whether those emails are just promoting, them to come try the gym, that goes into the plan. Because what you don't want to do is like just randomly send an email here and there. You want to have an intention behind, all right, this is an asset. This is what I call a finger on the glove. This year, I'm going to leverage that finger on the glove, sometimes more, sometimes less. What's it going to be? But having that, to use your word, plan, right? A plan of how we're going to leverage that specific thing, um, to do it. So that would be.
Yeah, and as you talk about this stuff, there always seems to be, wow, yeah, there's really a lot for each of these things. There's not, like, for example, with your 50 strong, we talked a lot about this. last episode, there's a lot to it. It's not just something like, hey guys, do 50 strong here. It's pretty easy. You're gonna do you have to have all your ducks in a row. There's a lot. Like I know you teach that to your gyms
Yeah.
about things like that. Like that's the Surge program, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we do in the Surge. It's basically like the MBA that most gym owners never got. And that was like, I remember, I think I've told the story, but 2 years, my 2 years into owning a gym, I was broke and literally did not know how to get new customers at all. And it was the marketing education that I got, the education that I was self-taught, right? Really just reading books and, going to seminars and courses. But I understood that like I knew how to train people well and I was decent at keeping people, but I knew that that was kind of somewhat out of my control. Like not everyone's going to stay forever. There's things that happen, right? But I just didn't know what to do, like to get new customers. And in the beginning, you go on instinct, right? In the beginning, you go on by, putting flyers on cars and like handing out your business card to local businesses. It's just like there's all like this like, and some of it works, right? Some of it works, in spite of you. Um, but it wasn't until I really learned the the foundations of marketing, right? The understanding of a clear target market, the understanding of a marketing message, the understanding of multiple ways to get that message out there. It wasn't until the understanding of making offers and doing that often. It wasn't until I got that I really got successful at my gym. And so I think that's like I kind of have this passion around teaching it, right? And not just like I'll do things like 50 strong where I'll give the stuff out and like make it done for you. And I find like I do realize that people do need some of that stuff. I think that that is important to have some things that are like, all right, just let me make it easy for you. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine. But at the end of the day, what I really want to do is teach as many people as possible this skill because this skill changed my life, right? It really did. Like, I'm not doing this podcast. I'm not sitting here if I don't learn this skill. I run 4 companies, and all 4 of them are based on the principles of marketing. And all 4 of them have been able to come successful based on the principles of marketing. Like, I knew I don't operate 4 companies. Honestly, I only operate one, and that's the mastermind. The rest of them are operated by other people. But I deliver the marketing prowess to each one of them. And it's honestly like it's a skill that I've learned, just a skill like you've developed as a podcast host. Like you're a great podcast host. You know how to ask good questions. That's a skill that you developed over time. As a coach, as a trainer, we develop skills. And I mean, I don't know a more important skill for a business owner to learn than marketing. Like I really think it's almost, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like it. I'm not interested in it." It's just like, and I think it's like, um, I don't want to say negligent, right? That's not the right word, but it's almost like I think it's almost irresponsible not to learn it, not to understand it, not to know, because it's the start. Nothing happens until you get a lead. This is how business goes. Marketing generates the lead. Sales converts the lead. The operations keep the client, and the finance collects the money. The first one is the most important because the other 3 don't happen without the first one. And one of the reasons also why it's so important is because um, it's really expensive to find someone to do this for you, right? To find a really, really good person to understand and oversee a whole marketing strategy is going to be very, very expensive. And I've yet to see a gym, maybe 1 or 2, that one have been able to afford a full-time marketing person to do it. 2, has that person lasted more than a year? Probably not. you know so the reality of this is the owner of the business needs to understand this concept and this part of it, and I think that that's like one of the more powerful things that I am trying to do in as I call it legacy whatever what I don't know. That's for other people to decide. But what I want to do is teach as many people this skill as possible, because of what it's done, for my life and the businesses that have been created from it. And that's essentially the surge. Essentially, the surge is that me guiding people into that education, the education that they never got about marketing. And we do it in a fun, cool, not corporate way, right? We do it in a way of like grassroots. We do it in a way of like a gym owner would want to learn, right? I don't think any gym owner wants to go take a marketing class at their local college because that's going to be boring as shit,
Yeah. Expand
right?
on that though. Like in what how do you make this grassroots or fun or because it's not easy, but marketing can be fun. I love it. I love that part of it.
Well, here's the thing. The first thing that makes it fun is getting results.
Yeah,
That's what makes it fun, right? What makes it fun is all of a sudden I tell you to do something, and people go do it. Like, oh shit, it worked, right? One of our clients that did the surge, his name's Giancarlo. He's killing it. He's a gym owner in Philly. He took the surge and he was just like, I think he was like 23 years old at the time. He had no money. He was all scared to take the course. And I told him to do this referral thing. It was like a holiday card thing. I was like, hey, just give all your clients a free month to give as a gift to a friend. And he's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And he did it. And he got 25 new clients in 3.5 weeks. I remember the testimonial. And he's just like, oh shit. So that's fun. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
fun is getting results, right? I'm not saying I'm not gonna like
yeah,
entertain you guys. Like
yeah.
hopefully I'm not
Juggle.
it's not gonna be boring, right? But the reality is me being able to teach stuff that you can go out and do. And I think a lot of people that are when they learn marketing or they have other people help them with marketing, it's this, hey, let's get your name out there, right? Let's go do the stuff. No, it's about results. It's about did you do something and did it generate a result? And that's like when you like, let's say you're a trainer, like to use this trainer example. You train someone and all of a sudden they start losing weight and they start having success. Like that's fun, right? Even though
Yeah.
the work might not be that fun, the result is fun. And so that's why I try to teach a results-based marketing plan that what we're going to tell you to do, right, is going to help you succeed. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
it's
How
fun.
long like is this an evergreen program or do you kind of offer it like once or twice a year?
I do it twice a year, sometimes three. This year I'm going to do it
Okay.
twice.
Yeah, and
And we
go ahead.
and we
Sorry.
teach it live for 6 weeks. So 6 weeks in a row, I'm getting on the phone with a bunch of gym owners. We're teaching building blocks of marketing. We're teaching, how to run some of these plays. What we got to learn the foundations first, but we're also learning very, very specific things that they can go and do, kind of like what I just
Yeah.
gave as examples. Yeah.
So do that's cool. So like do they within that 6 weeks, is it week one, like guys, here's your homework. I want you to do this. I want you to email or I want you to get on the phone every day. This week, call 10 people, 10 of your old clients. I mean, are you making them like during that time? We were talking about Michael Hyatt earlier, and Michael Hyatt had a cool thing. He called it the 5 minute win. And basically he would you would go down, I'd go down to Nashville every quarter and then each day in like one time in the morning and then one time in the afternoon, we did this. He took a break. He said, right now, I want you to do one thing. It's going to be really quick, whether that's send one email or make a call or write a headline or start a headline for your email. Do one thing that's going to make you kind of get you a little closer to that goal. Are you doing a lot of that type of stuff within that 6 weeks?
Yeah, for sure. There's homework and there's not. And what I try to do with the homework too is give them assignments that are going to make their business better. Like kind of like if you build a house, or let's just say you got a house and you want to make the house, improve the house. Well, you're going to get more value from replacing the roof than you would for painting the bathroom door yellow, right? And so that's what we try to do is create things and create systems and processes that they can use forever, right? One of the examples would be teaching them how to create a unique selling proposition, which is a statement that shows how that gym is different than other gyms down the street. Once you have that, you've got it. It's an asset that you use for a really, really long time. So it's not just about doing a bunch of busy work. It's about what are the things that we can do to actually make that business stronger.
You said you do it a couple times a year. When is the next surge program?
Next run starts January January 30th. And so we'll be putting it out there throughout the month of January. But yeah, January 30th is the start of the next one. And
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. So can you send us a link just so we can or keep us posted, and I'll put the link up as well for everybody
Yeah,
to
the URL, the URL, if they want to type it in now, is just 6 week client surge, the number
okay.
six, the word week, client surge.
Very cool. Vince,
Yeah, I think that's it.
along this I think that's it. Along this line of kind of we've been talking about like the marketing, mapping the marketing out and the marketing plan, and we're talking about emails, and you were saying you pretty much do that every day. So that the consistency is really hard in writing, and I kind of want to transition this into some writing stuff. You've written 9 or 10 books. You have a new book. We were talking a couple months ago. You were telling us about the book you're writing for your kids. So I want to ask you about that. But let's just go over that, because I think it's a pretty cool thing, and it's real. You want to talk about a skill of understanding and learning. Like it's one of those things though. You just got to keep doing it. Talk to us about your thoughts on this, because you're really consistent with this and you're a great writer.
I think that, when you want to get better at anything, it's just like the more you practice it, the better you're going to get, right? And so I look at marketing from a standpoint of what's the one thing that everything that you can do in marketing, right? The one thing that has to be used for all of them, and that is writing, right? Even video, and I'm not saying someone can't just go off the cuff and do a video, but a lot of times scripts precede a video, right? Um, a social media post has words, an email has words, books have words, and it's just like I think that like what is the top of the iceberg with a skill that if you because you can't get good. I'll be honest with you, I am horrible at the technical side of marketing, like in terms of like running Facebook ads, and I know what helps a website convert, but I'm not like building websites and coding and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? And so I think that for people like me that, owned a gym, I looked at my ability to write was the most valuable asset that I created. So I didn't have expertise in every area of marketing. There's a lot of guys, there's some consultants that do what I do, right? That are doing masterminds and coaching that are like wizards with like, things like Active Campaign and I'm trying to think of the other one,
Click funnels.
Infusionsoft, like that kind of
Yeah,
thing, where
yeah,
they're
yeah.
like they're really good at that, like I don't know, I didn't log into that shit,
You
right?
mean confusion soft?
Infusionsoft. I've never we did use it for a short period of time, but again, like I wasn't involved in
Yeah,
it. No, I
yeah,
was involved in that. So for example, I was involved in if there was a follow-up sequence. I was involved in writing the emails of the follow-up sequence, but I
yeah.
wasn't involved in like the tinkering of all the stuff, right? But the most important thing is what's the words that people are going to respond to. And so that's I've always kind of valued that copywriting is something that I've done and I really enjoy and I like learning about. So it's kind of cool that I enjoyed it. Some people don't enjoy writing. Um, but it kind of started the consistency. Here's the first story actually on books. Um, I back in the day, I used to write an email every Monday for my gym list. And the email was the column was called like Mindset Monday. And I every Monday I would sit down and I would write something about mindset. I would write something about personal development, personal growth. And it was just like I feel like there's a ton of Mindset Mondays now, but back then
Sure.
there really was nothing called Mindset Monday.
Yeah.
And it was randomly the guy that was running the gym at the time, he made it the name Mindset Monday. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And so for 3 years I would write this email. And then all of a sudden 3 years later, I had like 150 emails and I sent the emails to an editor and they put it into a book. And so that was actually my first book. I didn't actually sit down and write my first book. Well, I did. It just took me 3 years.
Well,
Right. And so,
John Goodman just wrote about that. He just said he did the same thing. It was a blog. They were blog posts, and he sent it
yeah,
to a ghostwriter, and they wrote it. Yeah,
I love John Goodman. He's great. He does a great job.
yeah,
Um, and actually I talked to John not that long ago. I think he's phenomenal. And I always learn a lot from, he's just an intelligent guy and I always learn a lot
yeah,
from the way he
definitely.
thinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was like, and this was 10 years ago. This is a decade, over a decade, maybe over a decade ago. Where's 2024? Yeah, this is probably over a decade ago that this happened. And I don't know how it really came about, but I was just like, hey, I got all this stuff. Let's like put it into a book. But the point is, what I'm trying to make here is the consistency of that created the asset. And that's where I think that that one, you get better at it through being consistent. Okay. But two, when you're consistent, you also will build more assets. And that's one of the most important things for people to understand is that you want to, and I said this earlier, you don't want to do marketing. You want to build marketing assets when you do marketing. So each of those emails, when I was writing it, and I didn't even know it at the time, but each of those real emails, I was building an asset. And then that asset turned into a book. And then that book becomes a bigger asset, right? So that I think consistency is so important. And, I've been able to stay consistent through, and it's funny, the definition of a habit is this. It's when after a certain point, when it becomes a habit, it becomes harder not to do than to do. And so that's how I feel about writing an email. Like it almost like there's this weird crawling in my bones if I've gone a day and I haven't written an email. I can't explain it. I won't. It's and it's happened maybe like I can count on one hand how many times it's happened in the last like 5 years because I've gotten to a point where it's harder not to do than to do. And I think that's where the consistency comes in. The consistency comes in when um after a certain point, and the research I think is now 66 days, yeah, for something to
Oh
become a
yeah.
habit,
Yep.
but after the certain point, so it is not easy in the beginning. It's hard in the beginning, right? Because sometimes you sit down and you're like, I don't know what to write about. I don't know what to write about, like all that. But and I'll talk about this, and I think this is an important skill about how to, so because this is so you mentioned the kids book, so I have it here. And this is
So cool.
um yeah, so it's I decided based on the my one of my really, really good friends, Joe Hashi, did this for his kid last year. And I saw that he did this and he asked me to write a chapter in the book. And I wrote a chapter for his kids in the book. And I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I did it this year. And so I would sit down. I didn't write every day on this book, but I would write every Saturday and Sunday. I would block an hour or two to write in the book. And what it is basically just my, and I'm only 44, right? So I certainly don't know everything. I've lived life, but I certainly haven't lived a full life of this when I'm going to live when I'm 64, right? And I'm sure I'll have a lot more to say in those next 20 years. Um, but the reality is there is a lot that I have learned. There's a lot that I know, and um, I wanted to start a record of that. I wanted to start, a record of um, my thoughts and my beliefs and the things that I deem important. And I wanted my kids to know that. And my dad died, pretty early, right? He was like 73 years old. He wasn't dead at 73, but he lost his ability to communicate at 73 and then died at like 77. Right. And there's a lot about him that I would like to know. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
conversations, right? Of what he believed and what, because there's only so much by just watching him, right? And so I wanted that for my kids. I wanted them to understand what was important and really also use it as a guide, for them, on how to live a great life and how to live a full life. And so the book is 365 lessons, thoughts, ideas, teachings, things like that, for them. And I asked a few different people. Vanessa obviously wrote a couple chapters for me. I asked my buddy Joe Hashi, to write a chapter for me. And but I wrote, I think out of 365, I think I wrote 353. And it took consistency. I will tell you this. I got to the point where I got to 160 and I was just like, I don't freaking know if I can do this. I was like, I don't know if I don't know anything else. Like I think I've told them everything I know, right? And at 160 and like but what you start to do, and this is where it answers the question of how do you get all the ideas. I think that the most important thing is awareness, right? Just being aware of what is going on around you. And then how do you leverage that to the value of your market, right? So an example is like a gym owner. They might be like, oh, I don't know what to write about. I sit down and I'm not sure what to write about. Well, there's things that are happening to you every day that you could write about. Like, look at Seinfeld. It's the most popular sitcom in the world, and it's about nothing, right? That's like
Yeah.
what like it's like the whole thing is just about like, oh, George had, coffee at the diner, and there's a whole episode about that, and then they make it fun and they make it interesting. So I think some of it is about this as you're going through your day, look what happened, and to start to think about, all right, this happened. How? So it's two things: connection, awareness, connection. So it's awareness of what's going on around you, and then being able to connect how that could be valuable to your market.
Yeah.
So a lot of things happened throughout my life, the lessons that happened through their life, and I was able to link it back to something that would bring value to my kid's life to understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the ideas come from this what's called synthetic creativity, where you're not just from scratch creating this blank slate and like this new concept and this new innovative idea. No, creativity is really just about making connections of like looking at something that happened and then being able to communicate it in a way that's important. That's creative. That's really
Yeah.
creative. Like
Like,
I'm not an innovative person at all, but I'm very creative.
yeah. I mean, it's only 10:30. I could tell you I learned a lesson a little while ago. I got a text from Vince and he said, Aunt, 12:30? I thought we were doing 9:30. So we had a little miscommunication in email. And I thought, you know, I should talk to Vince because he should really have an assistant, somebody that's doing this kind of work, because we wouldn't have had this problem. So I could write about that. Vince, I do have one question about your book, though, breaking your balls. Um, when you were writing and you were up in that room and then you have three kids and I'm sure they're loud and they're playing, were you like, you son of a bitches, be quiet, I'm trying to do some work up here.
Yeah.
Like rewriting the book about them for them, those sweet little kids, and then you're yelling at them and screaming.
I most of the writing happened before they woke up.
Okay, there you
So
go.
I
All
did
right.
it. I would do it in the morning. And it was like it became a cool weekend habit. And actually last weekend was the first weekend I didn't write in the book. And it was almost like weird. I got up and I was just like, I was almost like,
Wow.
what do I do? Because I had finished. And it was like a weird feeling, but a cool feeling. But um, yeah, man, I've worked on a lot of things in my life and a lot of projects and a lot of things like this, but there's nothing more valuable and more rewarding than of a project I've ever done in my entire life than this. And I'm giving it to them. The hardest thing is not to tell them about it because the book is here and it's like a few days. I'm giving it to them as a gift on Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like I have the books here, and I got a book for a copy for. So there's only 10 copies that got printed, three for them, and then seven for the people that contributed a chapter.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's only like, and I'm not, a lot of people are, I've told this to, it's like, oh, you should, put it into publication and stuff like that. I think it's too tight. It's too close to, because a lot of our stories about our family and everything
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I had a really good time writing it. But I think the lesson to everybody is one, a commitment to consistency and writing. Right? If you want to get good, so this was easier for me than probably most people because I'm just used to it by now. I'm used to sitting down and writing. And so I think that the skill of writing, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, it's a very valuable asset in terms of marketing, right? Um, but then it gives you opportunities like this, like to be able to create this resource, for my children is incredible, and it wouldn't happen without the consistency and the dedication to learning writing from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
So and going back full circle to the email conversation we had, I think that's the easiest way, right? Because like email, it's like you don't have they don't need to be super long. Like my emails range from 200 to 500 words,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, all right, sitting down and you're doing something 2 to 3 days a week that is 200 to 500 words. And every time you do that, you're practicing. You're practicing getting the words on paper. You're practicing thinking about who you're talking to. You're practicing thinking about what's going to make that person, respond to this, because that is the other thing with email. You can know if it worked right away. You send the email out, and if you ask people to respond, how many responses did you get? If you ask people to click a link, how many links you get? It's immediate gratification,
Yeah.
right? So I just it's again, I'm biased because that's the tool that I've used. But I think if someone does want to get better at marketing, it's a great way to practice it. And that's one of the, we do a module 5, I think, in the Surge. We go over email writing. There's a whole module on writing better emails and how to make money from writing emails, right? So it's not just about writing the emails. It's like, how do you get people to click a link to respond that can move the needle for your business? It's not just about writing the emails, it's getting emails to get results.
Yeah. Vince, we don't have the time to go too deep into this, but you and I mentioned this a little bit. And I think the intangible here on the writing is you've developed a voice over time. In the beginning, you probably didn't have your voice. You were probably there are certain things that you were trying to maybe do for the business, but over time you developed a voice, and that goes into other aspects of your marketing and what you do. And then, I think one of the things about you is you're really relatable. And you and I were talking about like Michael Hyatt for me was I looked at his life and I thought, and there was another coach that I didn't want to live like that guy, but Michael Hyatt, I was like, wow. And by the way, we didn't have the same. Michael was pretty religious and he mentioned that a lot, but it didn't bother me because he didn't really throw it on me. But I looked at the way he lived. It's why we talked earlier about Mike Boyle, about how Mike's very relatable to people. I remember Functional Strength Coach 1, he's like, guys, we're almost done. And all I got to say is, I just want to go next door for a beer after this. So you're all invited to come for a beer. And Mike talked to everybody. He was hanging. And anybody that goes to a functional training summit knows that's what Mike does. He's very relatable to people. And I think that's one of the things with you is it humanizes you, and it kind of gives us this thing like, oh, Vince isn't just this marketing machine. He's a dad, and he's a husband. You talk about Vanessa a lot. So I think there's an element here that eventually your voice comes out the more you do this.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I know that there's a lot of other guys out there that are doing what I'm doing, and they're renting mansions and they're driving these cars and they're going out to Vegas and they're doing the thing. And I think one of the things that I try to do is just live as authentic of a life that I can, right? And with me, what you see is what you get. Like I talk about my kids, I talk about my family. I like to travel, but we're not like going. I'm not like, oh, this week we're in Turkey, and then next week we're in Greece, and like that's fine, right? But I value being home with my family and being home with my kids. So I think it's more along the lines of creating the narrative of a story where and it's why I did stuff like write the kids book. It's like creating this narrative, this story of what people want out of their life. I just try to be my own authentic self. This sweatshirt I'm wearing is 10 years old. I drive a truck and I probably always will. And I think that's just, I don't know. Everyone's drawn to different people, and I'm just trying to, in this industry with this job, that I have is to inspire people to live their own version of their life. And I hope I'm doing it. I think I'm doing it. And, that's what I guess my answer to that question.
Very cool. Vince, thanks for doing this, but we had a couple challenges with our with this whole with the Darth Vader thing here going on, and I lost power in the middle of this, kind of crazy.
This is so funny. I'm gonna text you a picture of yourself. It's hilarious.
But Vince, thanks again, and Happy New Year, brother, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ed.